It's Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here in Sacramento. We are in our Capitol Bureau, and we are joined by Mike Gatto. He is a member of the California State Assembly, an announced candidate for treasurer of the state of California. That election will be held in 2018, but you are finishing a successful, we'll call it 3.5 terms in the California State Assembly. Let's talk about the fact that you are being artificially removed from a body after 7 years, longer than some of your colleagues who only got 6.
So you're talking term limits, of course,
am.
and I think term limits were one of those things that sounded very good when the public initially was asked to vote on them. And everyone thought, this is great, we're going to get some of those people out of office. But then they realized that the lobbyists stay, the staff stay put, the bureaucracy stays put. And so you end up just having a group of lawmakers that know nothing, but everybody else still does.
Were you able, over the last 6-7 years, to develop an expertise in a few areas? I mean, when you got here, I have to think you thought, well, look, I only have 6-7 years. I'm going to try to zero in on a couple of issues.
Well, sure. So, it's really interesting because I tried, and I think a lot of lawmakers try. You never want to go Sacramento. You always want to stay in touch with your people back home.
Okay.
You want to stay put with the values that brought you here, which is that this place needs reform. But that being said, after 2-3 years, I realized I didn't know where the bathrooms were.
Right. Still.
And that's because you're usually being shuffled around with staff and they're guiding you. But there's a book by, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell, who talks about how much time you need to gain expertise in any field.
10,000 hours.
It's a lot of hours. And that applies to lawmaking just as like it applies to anything else, whether it's giving someone a root canal or digging a ditch.
What I find so fascinating is that when we hire someone to give us a root canal, we don't want someone who's only been doing it for 5 years.
You never would say to a surgeon, we're going to get you out of office after 6 years.
But what is interesting is while you've been here, there has been a term limit effort, a term limit reform effort that was successful. Does not impact you, but now folks can stay in the legislature for 12 years in either body.
That's right.
Even then, though, 12 years, I mean, I want a lawyer, if I'm in trouble, to be beyond 12 years. I want a surgeon beyond 12 years.
Sure. You could argue that the ultimate term limit, of course, is the voters voting you out of office. And that has happened in recent years. There have been a number of incumbents who have lost their seats, of course, in the California State Assembly. But I mean, look, term limits are good in that they bring in fresh faces and they make sure that career politicians don't exist, at least in theory. But they're bad in terms of it just creates those same people who are career politicians bopping from office to office.
Of course. And that's what we see is literally you have folks looking for their next office, especially in the former regime where one could only be in the assembly for 6 years.
That's right.
I expected that Mike Gatto would run a very successful campaign for the California State Senate. That is what most of us expected. Probably a competitive race. Anthony Portantino, one of your former colleagues, was looking to run. Mike Antonovich, a member of the Board of Supervisors, was looking to run. And you shocked us all when you announced you were not going to run for the state Senate.
Yeah, I mean, under the theme of not being a career politician, I think there's more to life than just politics. It certainly would have been the easiest step, the most logical step, and the step that would have required me not to spend any time outside of public office. But I don't fear being outside of public office, and that office did not work for my family at this time.
What does that mean? Because I think I don't want to get too personal, but as personal as you can get, what does that mean?
Well, so I mean, people know that my father was murdered, and we still have not been able to find who did it. Now, people ask, well, how much do you do versus how much do the police do? I do a lot. There's some weeks where it consumes most of my time. Everything from going through yearbooks where they have a lead about what school the person went to other things. But it's really not just that. It's also the civil matter in his case. He died unexpectedly and his affairs were not in order. And so I'm obviously going through processing his estate.
And you're a lawyer.
Yes. And that has been completely time consuming. His estate is not even 40% done. And this is almost 3 years after the fact. So.
And you have young children.
Yes.
So that also plays
young
into
children,
it.
Yes.
I mean, if you're in
That's
Sacramento.
What I was saying,
Right.
So I also have young children. They hate the back and forth when I try to take them as much as I can. But there's a lot of time I spend away from them, and it's tough.
If I may ask, how are you doing? How's your family doing? Because the loss of your father was, look, a loss is horrible as it is, but I've had a family member lose their life to murder.
Sure.
I feel your pain, and I'm wondering how you're doing.
I mean, it's weird. Everybody has heard the cliches when something like that happens. You hear this search for closure, and you hear this, how abrupt it is. It's definitely changed my perspective, and it's changed the way I think. But that search for closure, whatever you want to call it, that is important. Knowing who did this, knowing why. And then there's the thing which I'll never get back, which is I never got a chance to say goodbye to him. I never got a chance to talk with him about a lot of things I want to talk about. And that I will never get back. And that's just the hand I got dealt.
What would he say if he learned that his son decided to announce that he is running for statewide office to be treasurer of our great state of California? Would he be prideful, or would he say, son, what are you thinking?
Well, first of all, he called me Michael, not
Michael.
Mike. He hated when people called me Mike. And he was so offended
Michael,
I used
what
Mike.
are you thinking?
But he would say, Michael, you could have won that Senate seat.
Right,
Why didn't you just win that? I wanted you to go in there and kick butt in that Senate seat. He would have said that. But I think he'd be proud. I think he would be very happy to know that, he came from very humble origins, and I think he'd be very happy to know that I was going for something.
So why are you going for it? I mean, you had just said you were not running for the state Senate for a variety of reasons. Right. When you run for treasurer, obviously it's a few years out, so you'll have some time to do what you need to do with your father and your children, et cetera. That's a statewide office, 58 counties.
Yeah, it is. But my children will be more. They'll all be in school, for example. I mean, right now they're not. Yes. They'll be grown. I don't expect my wife to be pregnant then. We thought she was pregnant last year, so that also factored in my Senate decision. But I think it's given a little bit more time. I think it's better for my family's needs, and I think that I can do a lot of good in the office of treasurer.
Yeah. So why does that office speak to you?
Because it controls it's the state's banker and the state's investment manager, if that makes sense. And that is a profound responsibility, but it also has profound good things that you can do for the state. Obviously, if you have anybody handling the funds who not handling them wisely, whatever group that is, whatever household that is going to suffer.
Think about what happened in Orange County in the mid-'90s. The treasurer blew it. Orange County went bankrupt. He had his whole issues.
That's right. And in California, we've been very fortunate to have someone like John Gean in there. He's so responsible. He's so educated. He is so thoughtful. And I think we need somebody like that in there. I think we need somebody in there who cares, somebody who's well educated on these issues, and somebody who knows what to do. And I think that's someone.
So tell me about how your last 6-7 years in the Assembly has informed your decision to seek.
You mean like
treasurer.
Being chairman of the Assembly's fiscal committee during the toughest recession since the Great Depression?
Do it.
So, I was chair of appropriations during some very hard times. As chair of appropriations, you learn how to tell people no. You learn how to say that, yes, that's a wonderful idea, and yes, it's terrific, and yes, it's great, and it really sounds good, and the press loves it. But you know what? We can't afford it. And we can't afford it because we have to prioritize our money in the state for things like education and for saving for the future and for taking care of the next generation. And because of that, we can't fund your idea now. That's hard to say. It's hard to hear. But it's important. You have to be fiscally prudent, and that's what the treasurer needs.
And you're going to have to say a lot of things to a lot of people, like 39 million of them.
Yes.
And, it's not 400,000 or 500,000 like when you've been in the Assembly, or even 1 million if you had run for the Senate. Talk to us about spreading the message.
Well, it's a challenge. As you noted, when you're running for local office, you just have to make sure that you're the best known guy in whatever community you're running. But now you've got to be known in parts of the state that are very, very different. And this is a very, very...
Have you started your tour?
I have indeed. I have made the 58 county pledge. I'm visiting all 58 counties. I'm actually doing all right so far.
Yeah.
I was, let's see, 2 weeks ago I was in Lake County, a place I had never been.
Beautiful.
But I love that place. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And you really get to see what a great and diverse state we have.
And diverse is an understatement.
Yes.
I mean, we on the coast see California one way, we in the inland area see it another way, and in a lot of ways we talk about the north-south divide. I really wonder if we should be talking about the east-west divide, because that's where it seems to be the diversity of thought falls.
There really are 2 Californias, maybe in some cases there are 3 or 4. It's diversity of thought, it's diversity of outlook. In many ways, it's also knowing that opportunity, there's people who believe that opportunity has passed them by. And that's something we also have to change. As people who care about the entire state, we try to make sure everybody recognizes that.
He is Mike Gatto, member of the California State Assembly, candidate for treasurer of our great state. That election's in 2018. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento, Local Edition.